in an
Yeah.
8-year-old's eyes, go into some of these places, honky-tonks, biker bars.
Yeah. The biker bars were the best to play at. They were actually the most protective of me. My dad, in my book I talk about something that I call emotional English. Each of us are raised with an emotional language in our households, and we don't know we're being taught. But it is the language of intimacy, of love, of everything that we learn to interact and associate with the world as far as interrelationships goes. And the relationship that my dad was taught was a pretty tough one. My grandfather was brilliant, genius, charismatic, bright, and also flawed. A very strong will that, of course, it takes to want to carve out a living out of an unknown territory in Alaska. But he also was quite abusive, and so my dad had a very abusive childhood and didn't want to become abusive at all. But all that does is create a vacuum. So you can abstain from behavior, and that creates a vacuum unless you learn new behavior. And so after the divorce, when my mom left, he was very triggered. He had PTSD from his own childhood, as well as he went to Vietnam at a young age, was part of the Tet Offensive of '69, which is a pretty big and violent one. And he had a lot of PTSD, and so when my mom left, and he was just left trying to figure out how to handle it, he reverted to the emotional English that he knew, which was becoming an alcoholic and becoming abusive. And so I had this front row seat. I was in a lot of pain. After the divorce, it was a very confusing time. A divorce is painful, and then when your parent becomes an alcoholic and starts hitting you out of the blue, it becomes very painful, obviously. And then I was in these bars watching people in a lot of pain, and I realized you can't actually ever outrun your pain. It doesn't work. I watched people with pain spend all of their time and energy trying to avoid the pain, and actually they just layered more pain on top of more pain. And it taught me a very valuable lesson before I was even able to drink or do drugs, that there is no shortcut. You don't actually get to get out of this without pain, and what do you do about it? And so that began to be a real mission of mine when I was 8, of how do I handle the pain that I'm in. And luckily I had writing. I turned to writing at a very young age, and what it did is actually set up a very healthy habit loop. Our brains are binary. So we have a lot in common intellectually with sea slugs, which sounds very weird. But we're programmed to move toward pleasure and move away from pain. And we lay down memories to help us remember where pleasure is and where pain is. And habit loops get established. So our brains are very naturally addictive. And so as I looked at this idea of nature versus nurture, the idea of pain, how do we medicate pain? Are there healthy ways to medicate pain? These are things I started thinking about when I was about 8. And I have amazing memories, amazing couples you would meet. I wrote so many songs about the characters that I studied. I think I always had a writer's and poet's heart. I watched people from a very young age. I studied people. And I had a front row seat to a heck of a slice of life, where people really let me into their lives. And the biker bars were my favorite, because I think one memorable kind of funny story is we were singing at a place called, I want to say it was the Trade Winds in Alaska, in Anchorage. And the cops came because a guy was tripping on PCP out front, foaming at the mouth. It was a pretty ugly scene. And I remember just seeing there was really skinny windows on the tops of the walls behind me, and so I saw the cop lights, the ambulance lights flashing against the walls, and I was, of course, underage singing in a bar. I was probably 11 or 12 at this time, and living on a ranch, we didn't, we didn't have a ton of clothing, a lot of resources, and so my show clothes were a big deal. It was a little kitty, it was a white shirt with kitten prints all over it in a biker bar, with my hair very neatly combed, and I was like an earnest 11-year-old. I didn't play guitar, my dad played. And so when I saw the cop lights, I knew the routine was I would go in the bar and I would hide until the cops left. And as I was walking, I just, in the middle of a song, set my mic down, started walking to the bathroom. And I saw, these big bikers. One of the guys, nodded to this other guy, and the other guy, nodded to a bunch of women. The women, they're women. And all of a sudden, as I go in the bathroom, all these women start following me in, and the men had sent them in there to keep me company. So I would have somebody to talk to while the cops were there. And they were very paternal, very, very protective. The bikers I actually always found to be the most protective. And I just have this amazing memory of there's nowhere to sit but on the bathroom. And so we opened all the stall doors. It was a very long, narrow bathroom, and so I could see myself in the mirror in my stall, and I could see everybody in the stalls, going down. So we couldn't see each other this way, but we could see each other in the mirror. And these women just had various leather and acid wash jeans, the height of the 80s biker chic, It was bleach blonde hair with roots that long, and neon day glow lipstick. And this one was I totally love what you're doing, you know. I'm copying your accent now. I can't even think of like the biker accent anymore. But she's like, you know, here we go. We got. So she's smoking a cigarette, and she was sitting up on the counter with the sinks, and she's like, "You sing great, kid. You know, me and my old man were finally gonna get fucking married. Fucking son of a bitch. You want to sing at our wedding?" And I sat there with like my very good posture and my kitten paw print shirt with my long blonde hair. And I was like, well, my dad handles all the bookings, you know, for our group, but congratulations, and I'm sure we would love to sing at your wedding. And I just remember her dragging off her cigarette and the women talking and just the culture. I always felt very honored, actually, to have this voyeuristic front seat to so many walks of life that you saw.